are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, April 16th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about a couple things, a couple of contract extensions. DeVonta Smith, we'll talk about his contract extension, DeForest Buckner's contract extension of the Indianapolis Colts, as well as getting into Jordan Love and what his contract could look like, because it seems that the Packers are gearing up to give him a big contract as well. So we'll get into all that in just a second. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. Those are two guys that are looking for new deals, as I've talked about over the course of really the last month or so. And we'll get into how they're not attending voluntary workouts and whether or not that's a big deal or not. So we'll talk about that. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about a pair of Vegas Raiders. We'll talk about Max Crosby and Davante Adams and some of the things that they have had to say. So that'll be the third part of the show. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about Daniel Jones, him addressing the media, talking about his rehab from his torn ACL. And that'll be a giant segment to end off the show. So, with that being said, let's get into the first topic, which is discussing DeVonta Smith, DeForest Buckner, and Jordan Love. So we'll get into DeVonta Smith. So, he agreed to a contract extension with the Eagles, worth up to $75 million. This takes him through the 2028 season with $51 million guaranteed. And he's been a productive player for the Eagles, 2,262 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns in the past two seasons with minimal injuries. And he's becoming a leader in that locker room. And he's going to become more important with now Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox both retiring. And now the Eagles have two highly paid receivers, with A.J. Brown being the other receiver as well. Combined, Smith and Brown's contracts amount to $175 million, making them one of the highest paid wide receiver duos in the league. Brown's projected cap space for 2025 is $26.5 million, currently the highest on the team. While the finances seem to be fine for now, with Smith's extension and Jalen Hurts' rising cap figure, the team might feel financial pressure in the future. Saquon Barkley's addition to the team adds another star player to the offense, and also, he's making a lot of money too. Nick Sirianni, their head coach, emphasized the importance of building team chemistry and support among players, regardless of individual statistics or contract values. So the Eagles, they locked up one of their big playmakers, and that's huge for them. You got Saquon Barkley locked up, you got A.J. Brown locked up. Jalen Hurts, his cap hit is going to start to increase. So yeah, offensively, or at least on the offensive side of the ball, Eagles are making they got a lot of players making a lot of money. So, but this is good though that they locked up another one of their receivers, and they're gearing up for a rebound in 2024. You hope that they're able to. Well, I'm not saying A lot of people are hoping for that, but Eagle fans are definitely hoping for that. And again, I've talked about this on previous shows. This team is incredibly talented. They got a lot of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. They're looking to rebound on defense too, because towards the end of last season it was pretty rough. And I like what they've done on that side of the ball as well. They signed a few defenders to help improve that side of the ball. Also, again, changing coordinators on both sides of the ball. So, again, I'm expecting a rebound from the Eagles. And, DeVonta Smith has been a productive wide receiver for them. And I think the best thing for the Eagles was getting A.J. Brown, because that just made everybody better. Made DeVonta Smith better, made Jalen Hurts, of course, better. So, yeah, he got paid, and, he's going to be sticking around, and that's huge. So, expect big things from this wide receiver duo in 2024. So they locked him up. Now we go to the next contract extension, and that is DeForest Buckner of the Indianapolis Colts. So it's a 2-year contract extension, and it's worth up to $46 million. The extension comes while Buckner was entering the final year of his initial 4-year deal, which was worth $84 million with the Colts, which was signed right after he was traded from the San Francisco 49ers. Buckner is now 30 years old. He's recognized as one of the premier interior defenders in the league. And, he's known for people double-teaming him and excelling against the run. And the 49ers probably miss him. But at the time, they had to part ways with him and trade him. He's been a key player in Gus Bradley's defensive scheme in Indianapolis, earning Pro Bowl nods and a first-team All-Pro selection in 2020. Buckner has been incredibly durable, not missing a game in the past 3 seasons, and is capable of playing all 3 downs effectively. The extension averages $23 million per year in new money, ranking him 7th among active interior defenders. Over his career, he has 61 sacks, 544 tackles, 80 tackles for loss, and 161 quarterback hits in 8 seasons. The extension aligns with the Colts' strategy of re-signing or extending key players, with Buckner being one of the 10 to receive such treatment. Michael Pittman was one of them. They also re-signed guys in the secondary as well. So the Colts have done a good job this offseason retaining their own players, and Buckner is one of them, obviously. And like I said, 49ers, I think, missed this guy because, we saw how the 49ers kind of struggled against the run in the playoffs, and, they definitely could use him, but they unfortunately at the time had to part ways with him and trade him. So now he's with the Colts, and the Colts are going to be a good team in 2024. I think they will be. Again, they're going to be a part of that AFC South, which is going to be competitive. And, looking forward to the matchups within that division. And looking for a full year of Anthony Richardson as well. So, they got another one of their key guys signed. And, let's see what they can do in 2024. So now, the last guy I wanted to talk about was Jordan Love. And the Packers are going to be gearing up to give him a big contract. According to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, the Packers are committed to getting a deal with Love done, and making him the future franchise quarterback, the long-term franchise quarterback. So he signed a 1-year bridge deal last offseason instead of exercising his 5th-year option, which would have been worth over $20 million, but fully guaranteed. The bridge deal lowered Love's guaranteed money, but allowed him to potentially earn more through incentives and keep him under contract through the 2024 season. Love, of course, coming off of a solid first year as a starter, as the full-time starter with the Packers, 4,100 yards passing, 32 touchdowns, and, of course, a playoff appearance for the Packers, and getting a playoff win against the Dallas Cowboys. Love's next contract would make him a top 10, highest-paid quarterback in the league, and he would likely command around $40 to $50 million a year. Contract negotiations are expected to take some time, with both parties willing to wait until after May 3rd to finalize the deal. Green Bay's general manager, Brian Gutekunst, emphasized the importance of doing the negotiations the right way. So it's a matter of when, not if, Jordan Love is going to get paid, and rightfully so. I did say that you want to see him do it again over the course of a full season because, again, the Packers had a roller coaster of a season. Got off to a good start. Then they looked like they were going to be, they were playing like one of the worst teams in football. And then they got it going, and they rode that momentum all the way to the playoffs, and they beat the Cowboys in the playoffs, and they had the 49ers. They had them. And unfortunately, they couldn't get it done, and they ended up losing in the divisional round. But Jordan Love, towards the end of the year, really played well. Was playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, his signature win, I think, besides the playoff game, was probably that game against the Chiefs in Lambeau. And, it was Sunday Night Football against Patrick Mahomes and the defending champs. And Jordan Love rose to the occasion, played really well, and they won that game. Now, what ended up happening after that is they ended up losing to the Giants and the Buccaneers, and you thought, well, looks like the Packers are not making the playoffs after all. But they ended up getting things right and getting in and winning a playoff game, which was unbelievable. And now next year, in 2024, expectations are higher. The offseason moves that they made, I like a lot. Xavier McKinney, Josh Jacobs. This team's ready to compete, for the division in the NFC North, and they're looking to get back to the playoffs, which I think this team is a playoff team. They got a very young team, and I think they're going to continue to grow, and they're going to take another step forward in 2024, you hope. And I think they will. Now, again, I look at the Lions as probably the best team in the division still. But the Packers are right there with them. They're really going to give them a run for their money. So it's going to be a lot of fun when those two teams match up against each other. They split the season series last year with the Lions winning in Lambeau and the Packers winning in Detroit last season. Well, on Thanksgiving. That's what I meant to say. I know it's last season. That's what I was talking about. So I'm really looking forward to that. That should be a lot of fun. And yeah, I think Jordan Love, he deserves to get that big contract. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Like I said, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen right now, but at some point in the near future, it will happen. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But let me know what you guys think about these extensions and this soon-to-be contract extension for Jordan Love. But, yeah, I mean, with these three teams here, well, with these three players and their respective teams, I mean, they're all going to be in the mix for the playoffs. They should. 2 out of the 3 did make the playoffs. One of them just missed the playoffs. So, but I expect all 3 of these teams to be in the mix. So, and they're going to be re-signing key guys, or already have or are going to. I mean, one of them's a receiver, one of them's a interior defensive lineman, and then the other is a franchise quarterback. So, Jordan Love eventually will be joining DeVonta Smith and DeForest Buckner as getting his own contract extension. And again, it's a matter of when, not if. So, we will keep our eyes on that as, again, we're getting closer and closer to the draft. And, every team is going to be addressing some needs in this upcoming draft. And can't wait. Can't wait. We did have we had the WNBA draft last night. Caitlin Clark went number 1 overall. I don't think that was a surprise. But before we know it, NFL draft is going to be coming up. So, can't wait for that. So, when we come back from our first break of the show, we're going to talk about some other wide receivers. We're going to talk about CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. They did not attend voluntary workouts. So, we'll get into that, whether that's a big deal or not. So, that is what we will get into when we come back from our first break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about another pair of wide receivers, or some other wide receivers, in CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. So these two guys are obviously some of the top wide receivers in the NFL. Justin Jefferson, most people look at him as the best wide receiver in the NFL. CeeDee Lamb is right up there as well with the best. And both of these guys are going to be looking for new contracts as well. Now, they both skipped out on voluntary workouts on Monday. And, yeah, is this a big deal? Is it not a big deal? I mean, again, voluntary workouts, not really that big of a deal. But it's something to talk about. So, I've talked about CeeDee Lamb. I've talked about Justin Jefferson. And we'll go through it again. But, yeah, CeeDee Lamb, he's going to be playing, unless he gets a new contract beforehand, he'll be playing on his fifth-year option, which is about $18 million in 2024, and there hasn't been much progress on a long-term deal between him and the Cowboys. He's coming off of his best season, 135 receptions, 1,749 yards receiving, and 12 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, he's got his base salary of $19.743 million in 2024, and the Vikings, they have exercised his fifth-year option in 2023. He's also skipping voluntary workouts, but attended the team's mandatory minicamp. So this is, so this is from 2023. He also skipped voluntary workouts last year, but he attended mandatory minicamp. So despite nearly reaching an agreement before the 2023 season, a long-term deal for Jefferson did not materialize. However, the Vikings general manager stated at the scouting combine that Jefferson should be compensated as the best receiver in the league, and I agree with that 100%. But now, the other thing with what I was reading is now with DeVonta Smith's new contract, does that put pressure on the Vikings and the Cowboys to finalize long-term deals with their receivers? Now, I don't think it necessarily does, but, you know, when you see other guys getting paid, your guys might be like, hey, well, you know, where's my contract? So, yeah, with this, though, it's not that big of a deal. Like I said, Jefferson did this last year. CeeDee Lamb said, I'll be in Dallas. But it's going to be interesting how these situations unfold. Because if you think about it, both of these situations, you could end up having question marks at quarterback. Because with the Vikings right now, you have Sam Darnold as your quarterback. And, yeah, they're most likely going to draft a quarterback. But right now it's a question mark. And then on the other side with the Cowboys, well, what's going to happen with Dak Prescott? Is he coming back? Is he not coming back? This is something that we actually talked about in our production meeting. But, you know, if Dak Prescott ends up walking as a free agent, the Cowboys take a huge hit with their cap space. Now, I was kind of confused by that because I didn't realize Dak Prescott's contract situation. That, you know, the Cowboys have void years. So they kind of moved some money around. And if Dak Prescott ends up leaving, the Cowboys are still going to take a cap hit, which I did not realize that because, I'm thinking, well, if you're a free agent, that's it. You're off the books. But not necessarily. Because the Cowboys added those void years. So technically he's under contract till I think it was 2026 with what I was reading because I was curious. But, yeah, so the discussion was, well, if now that you know this new information, or you know this information that's already been out there, but I didn't realize it, should the Cowboys still, pay Dak? And here's the thing. I didn't say it at the time, but that shouldn't change your decision on whether you should keep Dak or not. If you don't want to keep the guy, then you let him go. If you don't want to pay him all that money. Now, I think I saw that if they do sign him, then they actually save some cap space. So, yeah, that's another thing that kind of favors them re-signing him. But look at what the Broncos did with Russell Wilson. They cut ties with him. They're like, even with the cap hit that they're going to take, they're like, we don't want you here. We're parting ways. So now I don't think it's going to be. It's a little bit of a different situation, but still, Broncos are taking a huge cap hit from someone that's not even on their team next year. The Cowboys might do the same thing and just let Dak go and take the cap hit. But that remains to be seen. But I did think that was interesting because I did not realize that the void years that were tacked on to Dak's contract. So we'll see. But it just doesn't seem like a deal with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys is progressing. It seems like that no movement. There's been no movement. And I know we've seen how some headlines that they're comfortable with letting him play out his contract. The final year, at least in 2024, letting him play it out in 2024, and then we'll see what happens after that. But who knows? He could be blindsided and a new deal is agreed upon. But it will be interesting if a deal gets done there. But again, with the Cowboys and the Vikings, yeah, you could have question marks at quarterback. And did see some headlines that maybe the Cowboys do draft a quarterback in this year's draft. Now, again, it's not going to be someone that's, in the top 10, but they could take someone in the later rounds. And, you go back to 2016, Tony Romo was the starter. But they did draft Dak Prescott in, I think it was the 4th round. So, and look what Dak Prescott turned out to be. Now, again, it's not like he turned out to be, the best quarterback in the NFL, but, he's been good. He's been good, I would say. I mean, again, not great, but I think it's not like, the Cowboys have been this terrible team for years. It's just, he's a good enough quarterback that gets you to the playoffs. That's why I'm saying he's good. I think he's good. I don't think he's great. But he's a quarterback that gets you to the playoffs. Maybe he wins you a playoff game, and that's it. And he's only won 2 playoff games. And the first year they made the playoffs with him, that was Zeke's team. I think I've said this before. I think Dak is a better quarterback now than he was back then when they went 13-3. When he won Offensive Rookie of the Year. And the Cowboys have not gone any further. And the team's changed. Zeke's no longer there, although he could be coming back. Still got to wait on that and see if that ends up happening. You had Dez Bryant leaving. Now you got CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper. Well, now Amari Cooper's gone too. But, there's been a lot of changes. But now this offense has become more of Dak's team. Well, now it is Dak's team. And they're throwing the ball a lot more. You want to see them address the running back position. And we'll see what they end up doing in the draft, because that's probably what they're going to end up doing if they don't, sign a veteran. But this is Dak's team. And we'll see if they end up keeping him around, or if, they draft a quarterback and they move off him. Because, again, you still have Trey Lance on the roster, too. So, I'll have to keep an eye on that. But with CeeDee Lamb, We'll see what they end up doing. Because another thing we talked about in the production meeting too, someone brought up, is CeeDee Lamb expendable? Because the Cowboys, they do a good job at drafting. So you can maybe go into this draft where there's plenty of wide receivers, and maybe you draft somebody, in the late first round, maybe in the later rounds, that maybe could become that next CeeDee Lamb. Not saying that's going to happen, but the Cowboys do a good job at drafting. They drafted CeeDee Lamb. They drafted Micah Parsons. They drafted good wide receivers in the past. You got Dez Bryant. You go back even further, Michael Irving as well. So you trade CeeDee Lamb, you get a lot of picks back. Maybe you find the next CeeDee Lamb doing that. I mean, look at what the Vikings did. They traded Stephon Diggs, and they used the pick that they got for Stephon Diggs and drafted Justin Jefferson. Cowboys could do that with CeeDee Lamb. Not saying they're going to, but it's possible. But I guess that was a good point that was brought up. But again, I'm still going to stay on my opinion that even with the void years, it seems like Dak could be the odd man out. It seems like he could. And if that's the case, then they're going to be looking for a new quarterback. But let's not pretend that, the Cowboys, you lose a quarterback that they're done. Because, again, you lost Romo in spring training. Got baseball on the mind, sorry. You lost Romo in preseason, and then Dak steps in and is the quarterback, and Cowboys won 13 games. Now, again, you could look at, they had the best offensive line in the NFL. You had prime Zeke. Okay. I agree. But Dak also won Offensive Rookie of the Year. He could have easily just not played well, and Cowboys season would have been derailed. But no, that wasn't the case. The Cowboys, he was a part of the Cowboys winning 13 games that season. So, again, I'm not a big Dak guy, but I'll give him some credit. So, but now we'll see. I mean, the Cowboys don't have. I mean, that offensive line at the time was, one of the best. It's not like what it's going to be now, because they've lost a lot of guys since then. Travis Frederick retired, Tyron Smith now left. They still got Zach Martin. That's it. Everybody else that was on that line left or retired. But I mean, it's a quarterback, a rookie quarterback. If they had to step in and take over, I mean, look at what Cooper Rush did when Dak was hurt. Cooper Rush played well. So I'm not saying any quarterback can step into that situation and play well, but I'm just saying, if they moved off of Dak and, you pay CeeDee Lamb and, you pay Micah Parsons and you figure out how to rework the dead cap situation, if there's even an efficient way to do that. I mean, I think a quarterback stepping into that situation it's a good situation to step into, because you have a sure number one wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. Not an offensive line that, it's not as good as it has been in years past, but got that. You got to figure out the running game now. You also got a good tight end as well. It's not the worst situation to step into. So, same thing with the Vikings. Sorry, it's kind of turned into a Cowboys segment, but same thing with the Vikings. I mean, whatever rookie quarterback that they end up taking, I mean, you got the weapons that they have too. But again, got to remember that not every quarterback is going to play well in a great situation. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, the Cowboys, we'll see what ends up happening past 2024 if Dak Prescott is still around, and we'll see what the Vikings what ends up happening, because I know, again, J.J. McCarthy's been that guy that has been trending up, So we'll see if the Vikings maybe are the team that ends up getting him. If they trade up again to get him. We'll find out. We will find out. But let me know what you guys think about Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb skipping voluntary workouts. Is it a big deal? Is it not a big deal? It's not really a big deal, but you hope that these two guys eventually get their money. Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe these are going to be the next two guys that could be on the move, end up being traded. But, I mean, I think for the Vikings, I think it's more important for them to get a deal done with Justin Jefferson than it is for CeeDee Lamb. And the Cowboys to get a deal done. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So before I go to break again, just want to remind you guys again to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, I will talk about a couple of Las Vegas Raiders. We'll talk about DeVonta Adams committing to the team, as well as Max Crosby eyeing a strong season in 2024. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, talk about a couple of Raiders, talk about DeVonta Adams as well as Max Crosby. So a couple guys, well, one guy on the offensive side of the ball, one guy on the defensive side of the ball. Well, the two best players on their respective sides of the ball for this team. So with DeVonta Adams, so he's committed to the Raiders. So I know a lot of speculation with him on, well, at least during the season, with him maybe wanting to get out of Vegas because of what was going on. I mean, the Raiders got off to a bad start. You know, Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't playing well, and Josh McDaniels clearly was not the guy to be the head coach for the team. And I think a lot of people knew that when he was hired. And yeah, so he basically said recently, if I wanted to be gone, I'd be gone now. This is where I want to be. DeVonta Adams signed that big contract in 2022, a 5-year, $140 million deal. So he's committed to the team. And now, with both of these players, they were advocating for the Raiders to keep Antonio Pierce as the head coach. And that is what ended up happening, which I think was the right decision for them. And let's see what they do in 2024. But DeVonta Adams has been productive with the Raiders, even with the question marks at quarterback. Obviously, he did want to come to the Raiders to play with Derek Carr, but that only lasted for a season. Then you had Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell playing quarterback for the Raiders. Also Brian Hoyer as well. So, yeah, it was kind of a quarterback carousel in 2023. But Aiden O'Connell was the best out of the three. Now, again, was he great? No, but, you know, they won some games with him. They won that game on Christmas, albeit, you know, they didn't complete a pass after the first quarter, but they still won that game. So he managed the game well. And yeah, DeVonta Adams, again, has been productive with the Raiders. In 2023, he had over 1,000 yards. He had 8 touchdowns. And again, this is with the quarterback carousel on the Raiders last year. So DeVonta Adams is one of those receivers that he could still produce even if they don't have a star quarterback. Now, again, I wish him and Aaron Rodgers were still playing together because, for me, with Aaron Rodgers, DeVonta Adams was the best receiver in the NFL. But now it's kind of Justin Jefferson's time. But, now we'll see what happens in 2024, what the Raiders do. Obviously, they did bring in Gardner Minshew in the offseason. Now, we'll see what the Raiders do with the draft themselves because, again, I don't think Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell are the long-term answers at quarterback. I think bringing in Gardner Minshew was smart because arguably he's the best backup quarterback in the NFL, and he played well for the Colts last season. And the Colts, they had a chance to make the playoffs. They were right there, and unfortunately they lost a tough game to the Texans. And, yeah, so now he's on the Raiders. But, I think that was a good move for the Raiders. But DeVonta Adams appears to trust the Raiders organization to find a reliable quarterback regardless of the direction they choose to take. I mean, they should draft a quarterback. Like I said, I don't think you're going into 2024 with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. I think that there's another move that is going to be made, and that is going to be through the draft. Now, maybe they see somebody they like and they trade up for him. So we'll keep an eye on it. But, I think the Raiders, offensively, they're a good situation for a young quarterback to step into because you have DeVonta Adams, you have Jacoby Myers, you got Michael Mayer going into his second season, Trey Tucker going into his second season, and he showed flashes in 2024. So, and then, of course, they did lose Josh Jacobs, but Zamir White did a nice job running the football for them in his absence. So, like that situation. And again, it's for some people, you might find it odd of me saying that. And again, there's other teams that I've said, that this is a good situation because, the lack of success for some teams. And now you're saying, well, it's a good situation. The Raiders, I think, is a good situation because of the playmakers you got. And I think Antonio Pierce is going to turn this team around. Now, I don't expect this team to make the playoffs in 2024. But, again, they won 8 games last year. And at one point you thought, they were going to finish with one of the worst records in the NFL. But they pulled the plug on Josh McDaniels. They pulled the plug on Garoppolo. And Antonio Pierce stepped in, did a nice job, really changed the culture there. And they won 8 games. So, who's to say they can't improve on that? They can't build on that. The defense was playing better as well. So, we'll see. Now, again, are they going to give the Chiefs some fits? Yeah, but this is the Chiefs' division to lose. And I don't see any of the teams that are in this division. I don't see any of these teams really stacking up against the Chiefs, at least in 2024. Because you got the Chargers who are kind of rebuilding. You still got Herbert, of course. And, Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes have played in some great games over the years. And Herbert's kind of been on the losing end for the most part. But, they're kind of retooling. I think the Chargers are probably the second-place team right now. Them and the Raiders are probably battling it out. And then the Broncos, I think, are probably going to be the last-place team. But that's kind of how I see it right now. And let's see what the Raiders do at quarterback. Like I said, I think what's probably going to end up happening is you draft the quarterback and then Gardner Minshew is probably going to start, or at least Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell are going to battle it out, and then the rookie quarterback's going to sit. So again, that's just how I see it, but I could be wrong. But now let's kind of get into what Max Crosby had to say. So Max Crosby, on the defensive side of the ball, he is the best player on the Raiders defensively. And he's fully recovered from a knee injury and is feeling better as ever as he enters his first full season under head coach Antonio Pierce. Crosby expressed optimism about his recovery and conditioning, stating that he smashed his conditioning test and feels better than ever, despite dealing with a knee injury throughout the 2023 season. So he was playing hurt. Crosby had a standout year, setting career high marks in sacks. He had 14.5 sacks, 90 tackles, and 23 tackles for loss. He earned his third Pro Bowl nod and was named second-team All-Pro. He played in all 17 games despite needing frequent medical attention for his knee and ongoing knee and hand procedures in the offseason. Now fully healthy, Crosby looks forward to playing alongside new defensive tackle, who I talked about yesterday, Christian Wilkins, but emphasized the importance of hard work over potential. Crosby acknowledges that games aren't won in free agency and stresses the need for him and Wilkins to put in the work together to achieve success on the field. With the 2024 draft approaching, there may be further additions to the Raiders' defensive front, but having a fully healthy Crosby bodes well for the team's chances for the upcoming season. And I wanted to just look at the direct quotes from Crosby himself. And he said, recovery and rehab has been incredible. I just did my conditioning test last week and smashed it. I'm feeling better than I ever have. So it's been an incredible offseason for me so far. I was definitely banged up. My knee was an issue, but I was able to play. I definitely don't want to do that again and go through that, draining it multiple times every week. It was a pain. But we made it through, so it was even more motivation when people were like, shut it down, shut it down, shut it down. And I was like, no, I'm not like everybody else, to be completely honest. I just had to keep moving. And then he talked about, pairing up with Christian Wilkins. Potential is one thing, action is another for us. It's about the work. We have a ton of work to do. Me and Christian haven't played a single snap together. We haven't done a single rep together. At the end of the day, we got a ton of work to do. I've said it many times, Christian is a great player. I've been watching Christian, seeing his career from afar for a long time. I'm fired up to get to work with him. And yeah, you also got the draft coming up. We'll see what the Raiders do. I mean, they could go quarterback, or maybe they address a position on defense. I think that's definitely what you're probably going to end up seeing, is you're going to see them draft a quarterback, but you're also going to see them, kind of go heavy on the defensive side of the ball in this draft. I feel like that's what they have to do. Again, maybe I don't know, did they make any other running backs? Oh, wait, actually, they did sign, I think they signed Alexander Madison. So they signed him to go along with Zamir White. So maybe we'll see if they draft the running back in the later rounds. But I think that's probably what they're going to end up doing, because at receiver, I think they're fine. Maybe they draft one later for depth. But I think for me, what their needs is probably quarterback, and then on the defensive side of the ball, maybe they address some things there as well. Maybe guys, they address corner, possibly. Maybe they could also address the offensive line. Probably see them draft a lineman maybe. But, yeah, I expect the Raiders to continue to be an improved team in 2024. Again, I'm not really looking at them as a playoff team. Could they hang around and maybe, fight for a wild card spot? I mean, it's definitely possible. But I think this is going to be another building block year for them. And then maybe in 2025, you might see this team really be a legit contender. Well, at least a playoff contender. Because, again, they got the pieces, defensively. Again, Max Crosby, you added Christian Wilkins. Offensively, you like the receivers they got. So they got some building blocks. And I think this, again, is going to continue to be this might be a building block season here. And then 2025, you might really see things take off. But, again, I could be wrong. That's just my opinion. But again, I think they'll give the Chiefs fits again, but it's the Chiefs' division to lose. I think they're going to win this division pretty easily in 2024. But who knows? So, but again, you got to like that the Raiders, they kept Antonio Pierce, and they didn't try to bring in someone else. They didn't try to, bring back John Gruden or something like that. No, the players wanted Antonio Pierce. They loved playing for him, and they really responded to him when he took over because they played better. And I know they gave up, but they also, they dropped 60 points on the Chargers. So they really like playing for Antonio Pierce. And on the other side, the Chargers really did not like playing for Brandon Staley. That's why he's gone. But I just wanted to throw that in there too. So, yeah, we'll see what the Raiders do. But I think if you're a Raiders fan, you got to be optimistic about the direction that the team is going in. And let's see what they do in the draft. So, now, with that being said, again, let me know what you guys think about these two headlines here. What do you expect from DeVonta Adams and Max Crosby going into 2024? I mean, DeVonta Adams, I think, still has good years left in him. He's going to continue to be productive. And with Max Crosby, I mean, now you got Christian Wilkins there on the defensive line. That's only going to help him. And, now he seems to be fully healthy. So, expect him to have a good year as well. But let me know what you guys think about the Raiders and what you think they're going to end up doing this season. So, when we come back from our final break of the show, we're going to talk about Daniel Jones and the New York Giants. So, he did address the media, talked about his rehab and where he's at currently. So, we'll talk about all that when we return from our final break of the show. So, for one final time today, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about Danny Dimes and his recovery process, where he's at currently. So he did address the media, and he is progressing well in his recovery from the torn ACL in his right knee and expects to be cleared for training camp. He expressed optimism about his rehab process, stating that he has not experienced any setbacks so far, and has had good progress with the Giants training staff, training and strength staff. Tore his ACL in Week 9 to the Raiders, who we just talked about in the last segment, and underwent surgery in late November. His recovery timeline was initially set at 8 months, coinciding with the start of training camp in late July. Daniel Jones aims to participate in some drills during the spring off-season workouts, but the decision will depend on his rehab process and the assessment of the team's training and strength staff. While General Manager Joe Schoen suggests that Jones could participate in drills during the spring, Coach Brian Daboll remained cautious and did not commit to any specific timeline. So some conflict there. Well, not really a conflict, but you got Joe Schoen saying one thing and Brian Daboll saying another thing. Despite the Giants potentially considering quarterbacks in the draft, Jones believes he is the best option to start the season at quarterback and is focused on his recovery and performance on the field. Jones has been throwing for some time, even doing stationary soft tosses post-surgery, and has progressed with his movements, dropbacks, and quarterback-specific drills. His primary focus has been on rehabilitating his knee, and when it comes to the neck injury, he said that is not a factor and that is fully healed. So that is that's a good sign there. I mean, all good signs for him. But, again, I've been pretty consistent. For me, he's not the answer at quarterback. And I think, for me, the Giants should address that position one way or another. Now, they could go about it as, if their guys end up getting taken, then maybe you take the best player available with your pick, and maybe you take a receiver. Because, again, the Giants have a lot of needs, and particularly on the offensive side of the ball. Because now Saquon Barkley's gone, and you did bring in Devin Singletary, who did have a productive year with the Texans, but Devin Singletary is not the long-term answer with at running back. Again, it's not the priority, but that's one. The priority is quarterback and receiver, I feel like. Because, I mean, again, offensive line, you can never draft too many offensive linemen. Now, they signed a lot. They've signed some offensive linemen this offseason. They signed John Runyon. They brought in, the tackle from the Raiders. as well as they signed a couple of offensive linemen for depth from the Buccaneers and the Lions, I believe. So they have made moves to address the offensive line. So I think it's really a priority to either draft a quarterback or draft a wide receiver. I think that's really how they have to go about it. Because the defense, I think, for me, is the strength of the team. So, and the Giants will, draft some guys on the defensive side of the ball. I can't imagine they're not going to, draft somebody on defense. But for me, with the pick that they have, you either go quarterback or you either go receiver. And you take the best player available. That's how I see it. And if they draft another offensive lineman, so be it. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be either a receiver or a quarterback. And if not, then I don't know anything. But that's just how I see this playing out. But again, for me, Daniel Jones is not the answer. And it has a lot to do with his durability. And I just don't think he's the guy. Again, 2022, he was good, but didn't light up the stat sheet. Had a lot of rushing touchdowns. That's why the touchdown to interception ratio wasn't spectacular. But I just don't see him leading the Giants to where they want to go. And that's, get further in the playoffs, maybe, get to a Super Bowl and winning it. I don't see that with him. I don't see it. Now again, he's got a good arm, and he's athletic, but I don't know. For me, I don't see it, and maybe it's just, again, he wasn't coached right. I mean, again, you went from Pat Shurmur to Joe Judge now to Brian Dable. I mean, he's kind of dealing with what Eli Manning dealt with towards the end of Eli's career. Eli went from Coughlin to McAdoo to Shurmur. It's just all in a short time, and it really, the Giants did Daniel Jones a disservice. They did. And John Mara has said that. He said that they have not done right by Daniel Jones. But at the same time, Daniel Jones hasn't wowed me. There's been some moments where he has, because in the playoff game against the Vikings, and I know the Vikings defense was not good in 2022, but there were some plays that Jones made where I was like, wow, that was really good. But then there's some plays where you're like, what is he doing? Like that pick six against the Seahawks. Now again, he was sacked. What was he sacked? Like 12 times in that game? You know what? Let's go back to that game. Let's go back to that game. We'll revisit it right now. But was sacked a million times, but not on that play. That play he actually had time to throw. And he got picked off. He threw it right to, I think it was Witherspoon of the Seahawks. He makes some boneheaded mistakes. Yeah, let's actually take a look here. So the Seahawks, they sacked Daniel Jones. 11 times in one game. And Jones threw 2 interceptions. Yeah, the pick six was to Witherspoon. But yeah, that was a bad play. That was just a messy game all around. 24-3 the final score was. But yeah, got sacked 11 times in one game. How does that happen? So I'll come to his defense on that it's just, again, the offensive line was not good. And the offensive line got better as the year went on, but of course it's when Jones isn't playing quarterback. It's when Tyrod Taylor's playing quarterback and Tommy DeVito's playing quarterback. It was not when Daniel Jones was playing quarterback. So, yeah, you could definitely blame the offensive line for why Jones, just did not play well. That had a lot to do with it too. I mean, again, 11 times. Yeah, it's just wasn't coached right, hasn't been surrounded with the best talent. So you could put that in there, but again, I just don't think he's that good. I think he's okay, but okay's not going to get the Giants to where they want to go. And you look at the Eagles and the Cowboys, I mean, the gap is still big. You know, there's still a big gap, especially after that first game of the year. And I said it, that game was going to dictate the kind of season the Giants were going to have. And they lost 40-0. And, you know, while I was on the dance floor at my cousin's wedding, updating myself, I didn't watch a single second of the game. I watched the highlights after the fact. But I'm checking my phone, updating myself on the game, and I'm just seeing what the score is, and eventually it was 40-0. I'm like, yeah, this team's not going to be good. They're not going to be good. And they weren't. They were not a good team. And it was a complete opposite of 2022 because they played the Titans, who turned out not to be a good team that season, but they were the 1 seed in 2021. The Giants, they pulled off a win, a gutsy win, score a touchdown towards the end of the game. They get the 2-point conversion, and then the Titans end up missing a field goal, and the Giants end up winning the game. And you thought, wow, who would have thought the Giants would have won that game? Again, it was against the Tennessee Titans, but still, I didn't think the Giants were going to win that game. That was a fun game. You felt positive after that. The following year was the complete opposite because they got blown out by a division rival who you're trying to compete with, and you just realize that the gap is much wider. They didn't close the gap. It's wider. And I like what the Giants have done this offseason with, again, not giving Barkley that big contract. Losing him does hurt, but not giving that big contract was the right move. Bringing in Devin Singletary, who's a decent running back. You signed some offensive linemen. You traded for Brian Burns, which was the big one, to pair up with Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau. I think the Giants are heading in a better direction, but you really have to fix this offense. That is the priority in this draft. You need to address the offense here. They need to draft a quarterback. I think they have to. But you also need to get playmakers. You need to get some wide receivers. So again, crazy things can happen. But the offense really is a priority. And I hope the Giants do the right thing. But I just don't think Daniel Jones is the guy. And again, you've heard from Rich Eisen heard from people at the Combine that the Giants are just done with Daniel Jones. I mean, right now they're like, oh, Daniel's the guy. But it could very well be all a smokescreen and they end up taking another quarterback. They signed Drew Lock to be a backup, and he did okay with the Seahawks. They beat the Eagles on Monday Night Football. Now, again, the Eagles were in a free fall, but still, I mean, Drew Lock showed that he could still win games. So, maybe this is what Daniel Jones needs. Maybe he needs to go out there and really, this could motivate him to go out there and show that, hey, I'm actually the guy. And you know what? I hope he does. Because I'm doubting him. I'm doubting him. And this is something that I would like to be wrong on. Because, again, being a Giant fan, you don't want this team to stink. But at the same time, I am going to stay on my, still back up my statement of just I don't believe that he is the franchise quarterback. But again, there's other factors to it besides his performance on the field. It's also just durability. And yeah, he talks about the neck injury being fully healed, but this is the second time he had a neck injury. The first time, that was like career threatening. The second one wasn't as bad, but still, I mean, you don't want to mess with that. That's forced guys into retirement, neck injuries. And now he's coming off of a torn ACL. He's basically been hurt every year that he's been in the league. Except, I think, 2022. I don't think he missed any games. Except, I think, the final game of the season when they played Davis Webb. But his rookie year, he got hurt. 2020, he got hurt. 2021, he got hurt because we had to see Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm play. Had the pleasure of seeing that. And then, of course, I mean, in 2023, it was at least tolerable because you had Tyrod Taylor, who is a good backup, and Tommy DeVito won you games. But other than 2022, Daniel Jones has always been hurt. So, and again, Giant fans are spoiled because Eli Manning never missed a game. Except when he got benched. Never missed a game. And now since Eli Manning, you got quarterbacks that get hurt all the time. Daniel Jones getting hurt. Tyrod Taylor's gotten hurt. So, yeah, that's another thing too. That's another knock on Daniel Jones. But again, I hope he proves people wrong. I hope he proves me wrong. If he proves me wrong and he goes out there and he is a starter, and from day one, and he goes out there and has a great year, and the Giants make the playoffs, I mean, that would be awesome. But I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. And I think the Giants, it's a smokescreen. They could say Daniel Jones is the guy, but in reality, he's not the guy. He's not the guy. But let me know what you guys think about Daniel Jones and the Giants. What do you think they're going to do with their first pick in the draft? I think it's going to be one of two positions. It's either going to be quarterback or it's going to be receiver. I'll take either or, but it also has to be the right guy too. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's basically it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows on the GSMC Sports Network. We got the NBA playoffs, but we got the play-in tournament starting tonight. I think it's the Western, right? It's the Western Conference games tonight. Got some good matchups, though. I just want to double-check that really quickly. Again, it's football, but the football podcast. But yeah, but I'd like to update you guys on some other things as well. But yeah, we got the Western Conference games tonight. Lakers, Pelicans, Warriors, Kings. So some good matchups there. So make sure to tune into the GSMC Basketball Podcast to hear about those matchups. So then we got the Eastern Conference matchups tomorrow. Also, again, the WNBA draft was last night. So you'll hear about that, I'm sure, today as well on Nelson's show. And, yeah, baseball in full swing. Check out all the other shows as well, like I said. Give them some love. Appreciate it. But yeah, with that is all the time that we have for today. Again, thank you guys for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.